welcome to the longest minute of the pre-meeting here. Welcome, everyone. Pursuant to Section 54956 of the California Government Code, a special meeting of the City Council is hereby called for March 8th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. We do have a quorum at this time. Margaret, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rarey?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. Okay, all are in attendance. We do have a quorum at this time. We will open public comments, and I will turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are on the closed session agenda. I received 0 written public comments that were submitted on this item prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. And I see no hands raised.
Okay, and at this time, we will close public comments, and I need a motion to recess for closed session.
So moved. Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, we are recessed to closed session, and we will switch over to the other room, and we'll see you there.
It looks like Vice Mayor Rodriguez is in with the attendees.
Okay, we are all here. We do have a quorum. At this time, we will open session with the City Council successor agency, the City of Brentwood, March 8th, 2022. We are re-adjourning from closed session. There is nothing to report out of closed session. At this time, could I get a roll call, Margaret?
Council members Mendoza,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Rarey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Here.
Mayor Bryant.
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. All are in attendance. If you could join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance,
To the flag
of the United
States of America
to the
and
Republic,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. As stated before, there is nothing to report out of closed session. This time we'll open public comments, and I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. Items listed under presentations, informational reports, or on the consent calendar. Requests for future agenda items, new requests. Please save your comments for any other items that are on the agenda for that part of the meeting when you'll have the opportunity to provide them. I received no written public comments on this item that were submitted to the City Clerk prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, I do have one hand raised. I'll go ahead and call on Cinziana Todor. Cinziana, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Really quickly, I just want to ask for financial accountability from our governing bodies for Brentwood. I just saw another survey for labor force or labor market, whatever we want to call it, that now it's a joint effort with cities in our regions and so on. I am very confused why we spend all this money on surveys over surveys over surveys when we see very clearly that a city does have the data. It's been collected recently, and I can give you a quick example. I follow the Innovation Center developments and all the town hall meetings they held. And as recently as January 19, 2021, Joshua Ewan, who does an amazing job as a city staff member for economic development, mentioned our labor market analysis indicates Brentwood and the surrounding area has a high level of finance, insurance, real estate sector employees. So why is this not relevant and data that cannot be used in attracting businesses to come and settle here when, I mean, we just have it. Why pay and do more analysis, hire more consultants on our taxpayers' money? I just have to ask this, and I'm very worried that we're just throwing money out the window without any results. On top of that, what the general feel is that we are still at step one. We do surveys over surveys, nothing happens. some economic development director or manager is being hired, tries to make their impact, and conduct another survey. So I just want you to be aware of, this financial, like money just going down the drain without specific results. Also, there's an item F2.2, and I want to bring your attention to the comments that Councilmember Rodriguez made on February 22nd during the council meeting, saying that he's negotiating and talking about real estate deals, specifically around buildings owned by the city. So please look in.
Thank you. The speaker's timer was up. I'll call on Danny Dorman next. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me because I'm using a different device?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right. Echoing what the previous caller said with respect to the monies that we spend on surveys and so on, I agree that we need to do some diligence. I am sure that the surveys and the work that's being put into it is not free. And so we're either spending money to outside people to ask the same questions, or we're spending inside money of staff to regurgitate the same information. Now, tonight, I'd like to discuss and hopefully get clarification regarding Johnny Rodriguez's comments in his last informational report. I posted the 40 seconds that he spent on his informational report. Unfortunately, I can't play it as much as I really wanted to play it tonight. So that way you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Specifically, quote, I had a meeting with a gentleman in the future, possibly buying a building that I know now we're considering to use as a youth center. Why is the vice mayor speaking to someone about purchasing land the city is interested in or selling land? Was he speaking as a member of the council? What was the conversation about and who was it with? Next quote, I had different meetings with city staff in regards to a few things that are coming up in the future on the agenda, unquote. Well, what are the few things? Maybe finding more about the piece of land that the city's interested in selling is what was discussed or what he was trying to find out. We don't know. And then coming up on future agendas, again, like what? Maybe rezoning, maybe land ownership. This is my beef with the vice mayor. I talked to people about some things and I did stuff. Each of you go into a great deal of detail about your informational reports, sometimes TMI, but generally speaking, informative. What Johnny Rodriguez fails to do is give us something, except more questions. I already expect to hear some variation of, oh, I didn't know, I didn't think it was important, I forgot exactly what we discussed. And I can see his eyes rolling as we speak. But the bottom line is, if the vice mayor doesn't know what is considered improper, then I'm glad his seat is up for grabs. Lastly, I'm formally asking that the council or the city attorney look into this conversation.
The speaker's timer was up. I don't have any additional hands raised.
Thank you. Then at this time, we will close public comments and we'll move into presentations. Item A1 is a proclamation proclaiming March 2022 as American Red Cross Month. This is the proclamation. Whereas in times of crisis, people in Brentwood come together to care for one another, this humanitarian spirit is part of the foundation of our community and is exemplified by American Red Cross volunteers and donors. And whereas despite the ongoing challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need during record-breaking wildfires, horrific tornadoes, extreme winter storms, and summer heat waves, volunteers continued to roll up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas last year in Contra Costa County, 518 families affected by 130 devastating home fires relied on the American Red Cross and their partners for comfort and hope, emergency financial assistance, and community resources. And whereas Contra Costa County residents hosted 788 blood drives and donated 17,277 units of life-saving blood, 8,486 local community members took classes to learn skills like first aid and CPR, 910 military members and their families received support and services. And whereas Red Cross volunteers deployed 552 times, dedicating 61,930 volunteer hours to assist neighbors in California and around the country during 41 different disaster relief operations of all sizes. And whereas their work to prevent and alleviate human suffering is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize March 2022 as American Red Cross Month. We dedicate this month to all who continue to advance the noble legacy of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, who lived by her words, "You must never think of anything except the need and how to meet it." And we ask others to join in this commitment, reach out, and support this humanitarian mission, dated this 8th day of March 2022. Item A2 is the proclamation calling March 2022 as Prescription Drug Awareness Month. Here's the proclamation. Whereas when used as prescribed by a doctor.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Excuse me, Mayor. Wasn't Mickey supposed to accept that, or does that happen at the end?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I appreciate your help. Mickey.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and the public. For those of you who may not know, I do wear many hats. I'm going to take off my city engineer hat and actually put on my Red Cross Contra Costa Leadership Council pin. So on behalf of the American Red Cross, I do want to thank you, Mayor, and the council for your long-standing support for the American Red Cross. We've got a long history of a great partnership between the city of Brentwood as well as the Brentwood community and the Red Cross. I do want to take particular note of your Human Resources Department and your Parks and Rec Department for facilitating many blood drives in the Brentwood community. So in addition to the churches and other organizations, even in the depth of the pandemic, Brentwood once again led the county. So Brentwood had the most blood donated last year of all cities in Contra Costa County, with over 2,400 units of blood donated. So congratulations. Keep in mind that every unit of blood can save up to 3 lives. So that's literally saving potentially thousands of lives. So we, again, look forward to another successful partnership, another successful year with the city and the community of Brentwood. And again, thank you very much for the recognition.
Thank you, Mickey. And thank you, Councilmember Meyer, for the help. I appreciate it. We will move into item A2, proclamation of March 2022 as Prescription Drug Awareness Month. After I read this, there will be 2 recipients to receive it, April Rovero and Sarah Goldstein. And here's the proclamation. Whereas when used as prescribed by a doctor, prescription medicines such as stimulants, sedatives, and opioids can be helpful in treating many illnesses. But when these medications are misused, they can have serious consequences. And whereas anyone who takes prescription opioids can become addicted to them, in fact, as many as 1 in 4 patients receiving long-term opioid therapy in a primary care setting struggles with opioid use disorder. And whereas in 2020 in Contra Costa County, there were 478,723 opioid prescriptions given to patients, which is an age-adjusted rate of 347.4 per 1,000 residents, higher than the state rate of 333.3. And whereas in 2020, a total of 16,537 emergency department visits occurred in California that were related to any opioid overdose, and 93 of those visits occurred in Contra Costa County, whereas provisional data from the Center for Disease Control indicate that the estimated 100,306 drug overdose deaths nationally during a 12-month period ending in April 2021, 75,673 were from opioids, and 161 of those opioid-related overdose deaths occurred in Contra Costa County. Whereas the city of Brentwood supports April 30th, 2022 as National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, as declared by the DEA, and encourages residents to locate their local collection site via www.dea.gov. And whereas the Contra Costa County Medication Education and Disposal Safety Coalition engages youth and adult stakeholders from across the county to participate in Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month activities, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize and declare March 2022 as Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month, and encourages all citizens to participate in prescription drug abuse related prevention programs and activities. Be it also resolved that the Brentwood City Council encourages all community members to pledge to spread the word, one pill can kill. This is dated this 8th day of March, 2022, and is either April Rivero or Sarah Goldstein available?
Hi, thank you so much. This is Sarah Goldstein, pharmacist from Contra Costa County. Good evening, Mayor Bryant, Vice Mayor Rodriguez, and Brentwood City Council. Thank you for having us. On behalf of the Contra Costa County Meds Coalition, I thank you for proclaiming March as Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month. The recognition provides an opportunity of community education and sheds light on both substance use disorder and the overdose crisis. As you so well mentioned about our local statistics, it's just staggering. As well, in the CDC over the last 20 years has identified 1 million cases of prescription dose overdose. The new issue coming forward, 70% of these cases involve opioids. And now we're looking at a further crisis involving illicit fentanyl-laced drugs, street medications. And as you said very, very succinctly, it's truly the case of one pill can kill. We're hearing accounts of this sadly locally, nationally, and regionally and statewide. So what can we do as a community? Education is critical, as you pointed out. This is a primary focus of our coalition. And I would like to offer some very useful, simple tips. Store your medications at home properly. Lock them up if necessary. Unused medications, please look for a safe disposal site. Many pharmacies, such as CVS and Safeway stores and police stations, have these new kiosks. So look for them, and anything you're done with, dispose it properly. Our coalition further provides free education and overdose rescue kit training, along with these rescue kits. Be prepared for the unexpected. Get your kit from us or from another source. Visit our website, which is medscoalition.org, and learn about our activities for Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month, and join our mailing list to get further information. So finally, I'll just say be prepared and be aware. And thank you so much for this proclamation. We appreciate it.
And thank you for helping us to remain aware of such a very important situation. Unfortunately, there are families in Brentwood and everywhere in the Bay Area that have suffered loss because of this. So thank you for this bringing this to our attention. We appreciate your help and everything you do.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, look it up. Have a good night.
This time we'll move into item A3, Proclamation proclaiming March 6th, March through March 12th, 2022 as Women in Construction Week. And I'm going to read this proclamation, and Maria Patchen will be here to receive it. Whereas the National Association of Women in Construction, Sacramento chapter number 63, has distinguished itself for 60 years as the voice of women in construction and in the Sacramento region as well as Northern California. And whereas the work done by the Sacramento chapter of NAWIC has benefited the region through community development and educational programs, whereas the Sacramento chapter of NAWIC has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in the construction industry, whereas the construction community represented by the Sacramento chapter of NAWIC has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trade careers, and a positive vision of the future. And whereas the Sacramento chapter of NAWIC has sought to achieve successful results for the Sacramento region and surrounding areas in cooperative spirit with other organizations, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize March 6th through 12th, 2022 as Women in Construction Week, and commends the National Association of Women in Construction Sacramento chapter number 63 and its many dedicated volunteers for their steadfast work on behalf and in support of women in construction, dated this 8th day of March 2022. And is Ms. Patchen here and available?
I don't see her on the line. She did have to attend another meeting, so she might not have made it yet.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, we will move on into item B, informational reports from council members and committees, liaisons and staff. And we'll start with Council Member Mendoza.
Thank you. Meeting with Planning Commission around the Brentwood Boulevard and downtown specific plan. The meeting fell short. We need translators for it, and we didn't have them available. Attended County Planning Commission meeting where they reviewed their SB 9 ordinance. Just want to hear about that. 2 California elected meetings, What's Next for Our Neighborhood Voices, which is the initiative around local control. Youth Environment Group, they're having a rally on March 12th from, I think it's 11 to 3, if I'm not mistaken, at the Antioch Community Center. So it's all East County. So if anyone's interested in attending that, they've been working really hard on that. I'm super impressed with them. They actually got a news story the other night. So they're doing great. Attended Livable California, where that group reviewed the bills. There's over 2,000 bills, and they honed it down to 146. And there's some that we're going to be interested as a city because we're all about land use, but surplus land, like the state taking parkland and that we use for recreational purposes. They're looking at that. They're looking at upping the density bonus in their favor, taking over publicly owned golf courses and converting to housing. Social Housing Act, which is basically a whole entity that can come into a city and do a lot of stuff around housing, and we won't have any say on it. ADUs they're looking at making those 2 stories. So, and then CEQA exemptions, which actually keep our environment clean. So there's a lot that residents might want to look into when it comes to bills coming up and right there. Senators and assemblymen. Redistricting meeting, we have maps, hooray. Catalyst meeting, which is also another local control meeting. I had a meeting with an MLS organization who is bullish around our youth soccer complex that we just approved. And I referred them to city staff to explore opportunities where the city could leverage their expertise. So that's super exciting. I received a message from an individual who is working on a development in Brentwood. And I just want to make something clear. I made it clear to them, I don't take meetings with applicants. I take meetings with residents. So what my suggestion to them was that anything that they say to me, our residents should hear also. I should not have any information that residents don't have. So I invited them to speak during the 3-minute public comment period if they wanted to share some information with me. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. Also attended the Downtown Brentwood Boulevard Specific Plan joint meeting, which of course was cut short and will be coming back with translators. I wanted to ride along for the Contra Costa point in time count with the Brentwood Police Department and the County Corps team member. Decided to do that. I know we've got a lot of concerns around homelessness in the city, and I thought if I'm going to try and speak intelligently about this, I want to learn what I can. So was on with Sergeant Chris Peart, and I have to say, just hugely impressed by him. He knew the name and the history and the situation and the location of every homeless individual that we came across, and they knew him. They call him by name when they see him. We've got a lot of schools of thought about homelessness in the city. I do hope that people will attend the virtual town hall hosted by the PD, the City, County Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Supervisor Diane Burgess will be on it as well. It's on the 16th. I believe it's 6 p.m. So everyone should mark their calendars and have their questions ready. I attended a planning meeting for the Liberty High School Playmakers Anti-Racism Allyship Teach-In, and also attended the event. It was wonderful. It was last Wednesday. We had some amazing panelists. The Brentwood Library was there. Captain Silva came to support. And one of our local residents, Phil Arnold, was just an amazing, amazing advocate, very inspirational, educational. Attended California Alliance of Local Electeds. Of course, the redistricting for the special council meeting for the maps, that is done. And attended the Livable Cities review of the bills that Councilmember Mendoza so eloquently reviewed. Thank you. And then attended my very first Agriculture Enterprise Committee quarterly meeting. There was a discussion of the partnership, I should say, between Contra Costa Wine Growers Association and Harvest Time. Discussion around the city's identity as a UPIC destination and the incorporation of that branding into city materials. Great meeting. I look forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, Councilmember Rarey.
Yes, since the last time we met, I also attended the Downtown and Brentwood Specific Plan joint meeting, which is being continued to an unidentified date, as we need to finish our housing element first. I met with an employment facilitator. I met with Chief Hansen for some updates. Rod Floor, a citizen, regarding the open space initiative that he's been working on, and would be willing to share it with the city if we decide to move forward on that. I also attended the anti-racism allyship teach-in, and it was the actors were from Hairspray, and then they took a scene and brought it back to the panelists. The panelists then shared things that have happened in their lifetime. One of the panelists, his life experiences just were amazing in some respects. The things that he's lived through and he was able to share is what I meant by amazing, is that and what he got from it. I attended the Capitol Weekly California Crime. It was an all-day workshop, and I had hoped to learn more about whether or not social justice is working, and unfortunately, despite an all-day workshop, they never did answer whether or not what's being put out there and how they're bringing reducing the amount of people who are being put into jails and going through other programs is working, or if it's starting to work. And so I was a little disappointed with that. Attended the redistricting meeting, a PAL board meeting. There will be a golf tournament next month benefiting PAL. The golf tournament already has a waiting list, so they don't need any more golfers, but they do need sponsorships. So if you are out there and you would like to sponsor PAL, you can contact me through the Brentwood through the Brentwood website at krarey at brentwoodca.gov, or Officer Christopher Bollinger over at the PD. He's our executive director, or hit us up on the PAL Facebook page. I also attended this morning a John Marsh Historic Trust allocation funding meeting. It was between State Parks, Senator Glazer's office, and the John Marsh Historic Trust. Unfortunately, nothing has really taken place since they received the funding from the state. They have not even gone out for the RFP for the project itself. So they will be getting back to us on the 18th to give us an update on what else needs to be done for the interpretive center, what the next steps are, and the dates for the movement of restoring and restabilizing the house, and also on whether or not, or what historic buildings are out there and what things that we can work on and at this point cannot work on. So I'm hopeful that next week that we will get all that information and I'll be able to report back on that. And I've been working with Hope House and the city manager, and hopefully we'll see something soon on that. And that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, I want to report a couple of things. Is participated in the downtown Brentwood Boulevard workshop that we had. It was canceled because of the lack of interpreters there. So I'm looking forward to that meeting being rescheduled. I also attended the redistricting maps for the new maps that we had to select. We actually selected one, which was great. I think both maps were really well put together. And I just once again like to thank the staff and everybody that was involved in that process. I also participated in that ag meeting with the agriculture enterprise meeting. I thought it was really a wonderful meeting. I think it was really just a lot of really good people and farm workers in the community talking about different ways that we could continue to promote Brentwood and its ag. We talked a little bit around the strategic marketing plan that was presented by Mark Smiley, who was a consultant. It was working with both groups, the Harvest Time for Brentwood, the Contra Costa Wine Growers Association, and it was a well put together strategic marketing plan that they're looking at doing, and hopefully at some point maybe collaborating with the city. So I think, as Councilmember Meyer said, I think it was a really good meeting, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. So thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I attended the Airport Land Use Commission meeting where we were dealing with, again, some of the topics concerned to a new State Route 239 that's coming in the future, as well as dealing with some remediation issues regarding aviation leaded fuel and the steps that Contra Costa is taking in addressing that, and as an industry, what they're doing as well. For those that would like more information on that, the Airport Land Use Commission will be meeting again next month, and I will be able to present to the city some of the steps that will be brought forward so that anyone that would like that information can have access to it. I also attended the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy Board meeting where we discussed the future meetings schedule, as well as some of the steps that the Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy Board is taking regarding habitat conservation in East Contra Costa County. I also attended the Tri-Delta Transit Board meeting, and received some information regarding the ridership. Ridership of the Tri-Delta Transit is up to about 68% of what it was pre-COVID, and continues to grow, as well as there are going to be some partnerships with Tri-Delta and the cities of Pittsburgh, Antioch, and Brentwood regarding some Clipper card bus passes for the summer, and more of that information once it's the specifics are given. I'll make that available to the city as well. I also attended the downtown and Brentwood Boulevard specific plan meeting, as well as the special redistricting meeting. And again, to echo what other council members have said, the work that working group did was absolutely phenomenal, and we have a wonderful map to move into the future with. Also, I attended the Safeway, both the Balfour location and the 2nd Street location had a grand reopening. They've remodeled their stores, and invite the local residents to come and see what it looks like. As well as I worked this week with a local nonprofit. It's a longtime local nonprofit here in town that feeds those in need and helps clothe them, regarding some of the needs that they are having, as far as the impacts of the costs that are going up exponentially. I know it affects every family, but our local nonprofits could really use some additional help from our community to just maintain the level of service that they have been bringing because of the cost of fuel and electricity and materials that are going up. So those of you that are involved with local nonprofits, just get the word out that those that have been helping our community for decades could use our help and focus right now. In addition to that, I met with several local residents. Good news is some of these local residents have cottage businesses that are licensed here in Brentwood, and they're looking for ways to expand their footprint here in Brentwood. So having local businesses do business in Brentwood and expand that business here is always exciting. And with that, I have nothing further to report at this time. And so we will move into item C, consent calendar. And do we have a motion, or would anyone like to pull any of these items?
I'll make a motion to accept items C1 through C4.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mayor Bryant.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will move into public hearings.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I don't know. Margaret, did you read the ordinance title?
You are correct. I did not read the ordinance title. If you just give me just a second here, I will.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
That's okay. My apologies. I will pull it up on my screen, and then I will redo the roll call vote. Ordinance 1034, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood amending Chapter 8.16 of the Brentwood Municipal Code relating to solid waste service. And now I'll redo the roll call. Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mayor Bryant.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, Margaret. Also, at this time, then we will move into item D1, public hearings. Item 1 is consideration of item D1 is being continued to April 26th, 2022. Prior to the motion to continue the item, I will open the public comment for anyone wishing to address the continuance. If you have substantive comments about the item itself, the council will consider this agenda item at the April 26th meeting, and we would be happy to hear your input then. So Margaret, I'll open it, public comments for the continuance of this item?
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I will call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will close public comments on the continuance of item D1. And if there's any comments or questions of council, that's open at this time. If not, do I have a motion for item D1?
Motion to move the item to April 26, 2022.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will move into item E1, discussion of community development project workload priorities and schedule with possible direction to staff. Item E1 pertains to this community development department's workload schedule, and community development director Alexis Morris will present on the item. Alexis, turn it to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. If you'll bear with me 1 second, I will share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So this evening we want to discuss that is a hard word, prioritizing community development's major projects. A few weeks ago, and don't worry, I don't expect you to be able to read this, I'm just showing it as an example. A few weeks ago, I emailed the City Council this timeline of all the major projects the Community Development Department is working on. These are special projects that are in addition to our day-to-day responsibilities, including 4 of our strategic initiatives. In my email, I indicated that I would bring this timeline back to Council on a regular basis to make sure the department is focusing on Council's priorities and implementing those priorities. The purpose of tonight's item is to confirm Council priorities mainly for the planning-related projects on that list, and receive direction on shifting the timeline and priorities for several of those projects. For the purposes of tonight's discussion, I updated the timeline to compress it so that the weeks are turned into months, and I added the year 2023. This is the version that was attached to your staff report. A description of each of these planning projects is also provided in the staff report. Based on feedback we received from Council in recent meetings, and as a response to some resource constraints, which I'll talk about more in a minute, staff is recommending that we shift the timelines for the downtown specific plan, the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, and the focused zoning ordinance update to pause work until September. And that shift is shown here on this timeline. Briefly, I want to talk about just some unexpected hits to our resources in our department last winter that affected some of our workload and some of our timelines. The department was faced with a couple retirements from Terrence and Debbie, which shifted a number of projects to Eric and myself. The passage of SB 9, which required a huge amount of staff time to learn about the law and draft our emergency ordinance, which was not expected in our work plan earlier in the year. And AB 215 was also passed, which shortened our already aggressive housing element schedule by at least 75 days. The good news is that most of these resource constraints were short-term, and we're coming out of those now and getting on the other side. The new assistant city manager is on board, and the new senior planner position that the council authorized is filled with a senior planner who has a lot of experience in housing elements. We're very glad to have her on board. And we should have our associate planner recruited by this summer. So we will have 4 instead of 3 planners, hopefully, by this summer. Council's approval of that new position outside of the normal budget cycle will make a huge difference on the planner's workload and, frankly, their morale. So I'd like to thank you tonight for moving that forward very quickly. In our joint session 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Rarey brought up the housing elements impact on the two specific plan projects, the Brentwood Boulevard and the downtown specific plans. It is correct that the housing element could have an impact on both the specific plans, but we won't know by how much for a couple of months while we go through the draft specific plan process. Because of that potential impact and the shortened housing element timeline that I just mentioned, staff thinks it makes sense to focus more staff time on the housing element now through the summer and resume work on the specific plans and the zoning ordinance in the fall. This would be a time when we would know more about what the housing element's potential impact is on those specific plans. The schedule shift will create an opportunity to focus more on council's immediate priorities, such as the open space initiative, the regular SB 9 ordinance, and of course the housing element. I also hope it will help promote more robust public participation in these projects. Otherwise, I am concerned that doing too many large policy documents and public meetings all at once could dilute the public's ability to participate in these efforts. While works on the plan, let me go back, I apologize. While work on the plans is paused, we can still carve out work on some discrete tasks, such as securing our contracts for the translation services and moving forward with plans for anti-displacement policies. So in conclusion, staff is looking for council's direction on our recommendation to pause work on the downtown specific plan, the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, and the focus zoning ordinance update until September, or at least 6 months. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Councilmember Rarey?
The zoning ordinance was to do legally mandated SB 330, so I don't know why we'd need to pause that. But definitely the others. So, but my question is that in here, you've got the open space initiative listed, but yet there's something that has a future agenda item at the end. Why do we have it listed here as something that we're doing and then also as a future agenda item at the end?
It's a placeholder, something we're possibly doing because as council brought it up during the strategic initiative and they're going to provide direction to us tonight, if the direction is to not work on it, it would just come off the timeline. But we put it there just to illustrate how that might fit into the overall puzzle if we receive direction to do it.
Okay. And well,
would you like me
I'll
to
get back
up?
to this. I'll get back to this during discussion, but I did go through and transcribe what was said and what was regarding that open space initiative, and it shouldn't be as a future agenda item based on what I transcribed from the city manager. So, but I'll bring that up during discussion.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Hello, Alexis. When it comes to the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, so are we going to push the meeting we had the other night for future? That's not going to happen soon. We're going to do that after the housing element.
So if council goes along with the recommendation to move it out 6 months, that would move that meeting out about 6 months. Yes. So that we would pause that, come back to it with a translator, maybe in person. That would be ideal. And I think we'll know more about that as well, you know, in the next few months. So yeah, that meeting would not happen for about another 6 months.
Okay, awesome. And then when I go on to the website, we have a Brentwood specific plan and we have a downtown specific plan. Why? Like, I feel like we do things over and over again, like, you know, kind of what we heard today, like we spend money on the projects we've already spent money on. What is wrong with the plans that we have in place?
So these, yes, so these are updates to those existing plans, which were adopted, both of them, you know, different times. Before I came on board, I think the thought was mostly economic development driven, that those plans could be updated and modernized. There's probably some land uses in there that, especially along Brentwood Boulevard, that are less than ideal now. They sought grants to do that work, so it's partially general plan funded and partially grant funded. And I believe the thought was that the processes in there could be streamlined, the policies could be updated. And that's why the council at the time moved forward with them.
Is it something we have to do?
No. Well, let me fiscally, we do have a grant to work on those.
Could we give that back?
Possibly, yes. So far, only general plan funds have been expended, but those are eligible for grant refunds. I'm sorry, grant reimbursement, but they have not been submitted. So yes, we could just put aside the grant possibly and not move forward with those and just have expended that money from the general fund.
And is that the same with the Innovation Center? Because I just went through the Innovation Center one on our website and I'm like, it's a lot of work. Like, I don't understand why we're doing it again. And if there's aspects about the areas we would like to update, can we just update those specific aspects instead of redoing the whole thing?
So the Innovation Center update is much more focused and it's actually almost done. And so that effort was, to be frank, the Innovation Center specific plan, the land plan was very broad and nebulous and not very well articulated. So incorporating this new master plan that the council looked at about a year ago now, I believe, into that specific plan is almost done. It wasn't a huge amount of effort on staff's part. It is, consultants are involved, but it's not a whole rewrite or re-envisioning of that specific plan. It's tuning up the land plan and then updating some policies to go along with that. So it's a lot less effort than the other two that we just talked about.
So when it comes to downtown and Brentwood Boulevard, staff is not going to spend any time on this right now because you're pushing it, right? So could we
just to clarify? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, to clarify, the only aspect we would probably spend time on if council gave us that direction would just be to secure the translation services for future efforts.
Okay, so we could just come back at some point and say, we're fine with the plan the way it is. Maybe staff has like this area, but then it's just rezoning or which that's kind of a bad word in this town, but it would be rezoning those specific areas instead of spending a ton of money and a ton of staff time to do the whole thing, right?
So if that's council's desire, then we would probably have to rescope what we've spent time on so far. Okay, because what we spent time on so far is re-envisioning the land uses. For example, on the Brentwood Boulevard, it was new land uses on those major intersections and new policies. It's a pretty significant update. So if you wanted to do a more focused update, we'd probably want direction to revisit the scope because we've already gone down a certain path.
Why would we do that now and not during a general plan update?
A specific plan update?
Like when we do the whole kit and caboodle, I don't know what that's called. I open the binder and it's the general plan.
Right.
So because I feel like general plan has way more participation than like a specific plan doesn't sound as important as like when we hear like that we're doing everything. So why are we separating it? Well,
they're two different kinds of documents. There's no one right or wrong way to do this. It's all about council's priorities and what they would like to see done in our work plan, right? So the comprehensive general plan update that you're describing probably isn't going to be undertaken for about 10 more years, because we're only, our general plan's a 2014 document, so it's not ready yet for a comprehensive update. So that you can do those specific plans at that time, or in the interim, you can update the specific plans because there's policies and priorities in those specific plans that are just about those neighborhoods, right? A general plan by its nature is a constitution for the entire city. And it's hard to drill down to those maybe special or innovative policies or practices that might, stimulate economic development. A general plan is a really cumbersome document to do that with, but there's, like I said, there's no right or wrong way. You can say, we're going to look at the general plan and look at these specific plans at the same time. Certainly could do that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Rarey.
If this is economic development driven, why is it first off, why does it stipulate an increase in housing? And why did we draw back the downtown area to bring it to Brentwood Boulevard instead of out to Walnut, which is commercial all the way out to Walnut. And Brentwood Boulevard was supposed to include the entire stretch of Brentwood Boulevard, yet it only goes between 2nd Street and Lone Tree. So I'm confused how this is for economic development purposes when all it did was reduce the area for economic development purposes and increase the housing in all of those areas.
I don't know that the end result would increase housing unless something's separate.
It says it right at the top of the thing. It says increased housing.
Housing opportunities or types of housing products, prototypes. The boundaries were drawn before I inherited the project. So I think again.
On whose direction though? The council didn't say to reduce the sizes of those areas. On whose direction was it to reduce the downtown boulevard and take the scope away from the entire length of Brentwood Boulevard?
So my understanding of the process is it was scoped out in an RFP, and then we got proposals, and part of that was to redraw the boundaries. So there's a different boundary for downtown and a different boundary for Brentwood Boulevard. I don't know why it wasn't expanded to include more properties. I honestly don't know that I'm the best person to answer those questions. Whether someone said, council, are these the boundaries you want for the specific plan? That may never have happened. It may have been through, consultants with consultation with the consultants through the scoping and the RFP process, but I'm honestly not the best person to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I was excited when I heard that Brentwood Boulevard, and I think it was during one of our meetings, that Brentwood Boulevard for the first time would take the entire distance of Brentwood Boulevard from city limit to city limit. And when I saw that it had eliminated the south side of town, I was really disappointed in what had happened. So yeah, and again, like Councilmember Mendoza said, I could see updating some of it, but to do this comprehensive update is not what I expected out of this.
For some reason, I have lost. Oh, there she is, Councilmember Meyer. I'm sorry, my computer screen sent you to the end of the queue. Are there any more clarifying questions of staff before we open public comment? Okay, seeing none. Then at this time,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I didn't actually raise my hand, but I was. So, Alexis, who would be the person to ask that? Do we need to ask that question? Do we need to go backwards and find the history of this and how we got to where we are? I'm not sure if it means we're reinventing the wheel here, starting from scratch, but will it help us to know what happened and how we got here?
I'm sorry, it cut out when you first started speaking. You said who would be the person to ask how?
Yeah, you mentioned that it wasn't on your watch, basically.
Right.
And so I'm curious, how do we find out how this happened, or do we even need to worry about how this happened? Are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Do we start from scratch?
Sure.
Is it important to us to know that information? That's kind of like a question for other council too.
Yeah, again, if it is important, we can find that out. I don't know that it matters as much going forward because you're the current council and these are your policy documents and your budget and your priorities. So I can certainly, retrace the steps and provide links to the council meetings or, a timeline of how that happened, but I'm not sure that it matters going forward. These are your policy documents and your priorities. And if you would like to approach the projects a different way, that would be a direction that you would want to provide to staff.
And it's not as much that I would be interested in staff spending all this time checking history, or like I would be interested in why the decision was made. Is there something that we don't know that's led to that decision?
Yeah, and I can certainly retrace our steps and get that information. I'm sorry, I'm just not. That's a question I haven't confronted in the time that I've been here. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will open public comments on item E1. Margaret, I'll turn it to you.
I received 0 written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I will call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. Let me go ahead and share my timer screen. I do have 2 hands raised. I'll start with Carolina Villaseca, followed by Rod. Carolina, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I was really disappointed to hear that the Brentwood Boulevard meeting was canceled due to lack of translators. We have translators that live in Brentwood that would be able to attend a meeting on short notice. So if City Council would like a professional translator to attend a meeting on short notice, not me, just letting you know, I have a person that I know that does professional translating. They've done it for the city of Antioch. They've done it for various entities in Brentwood, including Brentwood School System and Liberty School System. So if you need someone on standby, please reach out to me. I am happy to provide you their information so that we don't have to kick that project down the road 6 months and not get it done. So that's what I had for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to mention it now or if I should wait until F2.3. But I did want to mention, as Councilmember Rarey had mentioned, I do have a substantial amount of work done on a Brentwood open space and park protection initiative. It's based on the Measure I that passed in Martinez. I've retained much of the same language. There were some changes I had to make. They have special areas down there that the waterfront and whatnot that weren't applicable here. But much of it I was able to keep intact, and it was designed and written to withstand legal challenges. It's been written by the same people that wrote the Measure T in Antioch. It's a good document, and I would really love to have the opportunity to share that with city staff. I think that I can get you pretty far down the road to having something complete and ready for an attorney review. We actually had intended to put this out as a citizen initiative. We ran into issues trying to wanting to do a petition run in the middle of COVID, so we were kind of stymied, and we did need a legal review, and we were strapped for funds. So, but I do have it. I've done the work, and I'm willing to reassemble a team or assemble a team of concerned citizens who have a passion for it and bring it forward to the city. And I would really welcome the opportunity to work with staff in producing a document that the city could then present back to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one additional hand raised. Danny Dorman. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. Well, here we go again. I feel sorry for the young lady. She was, I can't say she wasn't prepared. I don't think she was expecting the questions that were being asked. And I'm hoping, and that's why I'm putting this on the record, that serious research goes into how did we get here. Councilmember Rarey gave us that blueprint, and how all of a sudden it seemed like it was a left turn. Something had to have happened, and I think we all need to know what that something was. Was it an error in judgment? Was it somebody dropped something off on somebody's desk? Was it, oh, don't worry, we'll be able to get this in under the rug? And unfortunately, those three examples we have had done in the past. And so I'm hoping that this is taken seriously. I'm hoping that someone will come back and say, yes, this was where the discrepancy was. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no additional hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion. Councilmember Mendoza.
Hi. If it were up to me, I would scrap the Brentwood Boulevard plan. I would focus on just fixing everything we can fix. Like, you know, I know that we were talking about the underground, putting all the electrical underground, fixing as much as we can. But the displacement issue is too big for me, and I don't want to displace anyone, and no one seems to have an answer for that. And even the consultant dances around that subject. So as long as there's a chance of displacement, I'm not interested in it. And the other thing is, when I went on the site, we have a ton of projects over there, so which cover a lot of area of Brentwood Boulevard. So we have all these projects in front of us. We don't know where they stand. We spend all this money on redoing the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, but then we approve or not approve whatever happens with these projects. And then what do we spend the money for, right? And again, increasing the housing units is not something I'm interested in. I just want to stick to the plan that we have right now in our general plan. No rezone is kind of where I go on that one. I feel like that also about downtown, like, we're telling people what they're going to do with downtown, but these landowners, do they want to change what's happening, right? Like, some of these buildings are for sale. Like, I know the Emporium is for sale. The one where Sip and Scoop and Brentwood Cider goes all the way back to the Mexican restaurant, that's for sale. I feel like we're doing all of this, but who's asking for it? Like, who wants the change? I don't know what we need to change downtown if no one is interested in investing in that change. So are we doing it because it's something that, like, we can check a box off and look at what we did? But so, those two I'm not interested in right now. The zoning update, again, only what we legally have to do. I'm not interested in changing anything. We already went down that whole road of how the zoning was changing and increasing density, and I don't think anyone in this town has the appetite for that right now. I think the only way that would ever happen is if the state forces us. So if there's some state requirements when we're going through the housing element that forces us to have to do something, then that's a different conversation. But as it stands now, I don't know what else we have to do on the zoning update unless what's legally required. Everything else was, the housing element we have to do, which in SoCal, everyone's just getting kicked back. So it's kind of crazy right now. The inclusionary ordinance, I think that one is super important. The sooner on that one, the better, because people are going to be putting in applications for developments, and we need to make sure that we are being active about providing affordable housing. We're going to start getting dinged by the state if we don't. So this is one way we can do that. And those are Innovation Center, like, full force, let's go. I think that's what we should focus on a lot. And I think we've been doing great. We have applications in front of us for that. So that's fantastic. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Rarey.
I would have to agree with all of what Councilmember Mendoza had said. But in part of the staff report, it brought up the open space initiative, and then it's listed as a future agenda item. But during the transcription of our strategic planning session, Mr. Ogden said, so we bring this initiative concept in February with all the other open space concepts, and the analysis will work timing wise. Then he went on to say, if we sense there's something that's going to be a timing conflict with getting on at least the November ballot, we can try to expedite things. So I'm not sure how all of a sudden the open space got separated, since it was supposed to come with all the other open space concepts that we were going to be reviewing. So that was the agreement that was said in the meeting. So I think that we also need to include the open space initiative as part of this going forward, because that was what it was said in the strategic planning session. And other than that, as I said, I agree with all of what Councilmember Mendoza had said.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer?
Also agree, but I did want to question when talking about the zoning update. At one point, I believe we had talked about potentially looking at moratoriums on certain types of businesses in certain areas that were a little bit oversaturated. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been mentioned, and there's some question about why the zoning ordinance we're not just moving forward, with it, what we legally have to do, because we haven't received actual full council direction on what that revised scope might look like. So I've multiple things from, different council members at different times. So there could be a moratorium included. It could be the SB 330 objective design standards, which I would recommend and feel passionately about. There's multiple things that we could include under that umbrella of legally required. Moratorium isn't legally required. It's something council may want to prioritize, like gas stations, car washes, that kind of thing. That would be added, would be different than legally required. So the idea was to come back to the LUD with a potential scope and recommendations to bring back to council, so we could submit a revised grant application to the state. So they've said, HCD has said we can change our grant, but they need a new application and a new timeline. So I want to make sure I get it exactly right what council wants in that project.
So for the potential moratorium, that's not something that we would need to bring up as a separate agenda item. It would be incorporated into the zoning, just to clarify.
It depends. It is a zoning ordinance change. So you can do it as part of that focused zoning ordinance update, as I've been calling it. You can call it out as a separate item and just do that and have meeting and, just focus on an ordinance to change the commercial land use table, for example. There's no one way to do it. It's just about what's most efficient and, the best use of resources in that timeline that I showed you.
And so what is the most efficient, to lump it in together and have it go to LUD? Is that what you're suggesting, or?
Well, what I would consider most efficient is to do one update to the zoning ordinance that has the council priorities within it. The legally required, if it's a moratorium, to do that once. That would take a little longer because it's a bigger project, right? So if council's feeling urgent about, I'm just throwing this as an example, we don't want any more gas stations in X part of town, and they want that to happen quicker, then that might be something you want to carve out separately from the zoning ordinance update. So it's about priorities and allocation of resources.
Okay. And then the SB9 discussion will have all of the things that you and Katie Wazinski and I discussed. All of those updates will get into that. Okay.
So council requested a workshop for that, which will have a long list of items to potentially, analyze for the new ordinance.
Okay. And then I absolutely would want to make sure that we're prioritizing the inclusionary affordable housing. Definitely agree with that. That was something that was brought up a long time ago. I know we talked about incorporating it, but I would agree. I wondered back then, do we need to keep this separate? I don't want to put it off too much longer if we're getting any new development applications coming in. So
it's coming on the 22nd.
Okay.
The next council meeting for discussion. Yeah.
Then I think I'm good. Thank you.
Are there any further comments or conversations? I did want to speak a little bit to some of the questions regarding, as much as it will apply going forward, how the Brentwood Boulevard and the downtown specific plan had grown into what it was, at least in 2010 when I got on council. That working group had been in place for many years before 2010. And there was a specific plan for downtown and Brentwood Boulevard that was already in place at that time. When we did the update to the general plan, and as Alexis has said earlier, the general plan is a much more broad and by definition general land use document, so that yes, it's our land use Bible. At the same time, as things change, as technologies change, as economic development changes in the United States and in our city, things that were possible that were never envisioned, types of growth and the specific progression of that growth in our community, sometimes, it doesn't follow the specific plans that were sometimes 20 years old. When we moved here and over 20 years ago, Brentwood looked significantly different, and those plans that had been in place before then didn't really apply because everything had changed so drastically. And although not having such immediate and drastic change, the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, there are a lot of things that are like Councilmember Mendoza had alluded to. There's already things that old specific plan had intended to address, that the nature of development that has happened in that area has already taken care of some of that. And so that's one of the reasons why there could be a need for some adjustment. I agree that it makes perfect sense to focus on the areas of immediate need, things that have already been talked about. But that's the reason why some of the change from the past to now is Brentwood Boulevard and Brentwood as a whole has developed differently than was envisioned even 10, 12 years ago. So going back and spending smart money to deal with what's moving forward and what this council would like to see, I totally agree with that. But in the past, the future was so general. There was a lot of questions, and the city doesn't build housing and other things. It takes developers to do that. And so although the city had planned certain things, if there's no interest or appetite because of the economy, which is what was part of the issue in Brentwood for several years, or the direction of industries and technology, sometimes all of that changes because the world changes quickly. And in the last 2 years, with what we have had to do in business in our country with COVID, there are technologies and ways of doing business that corporations did not intend to do for another 20 years, but they had, by necessity, they had to start doing business a different way. And they've learned that there's ways to do business that can address some of the issues we weren't sure how to address 10 or 15 years ago. The greenhouse gas issue, working locally, working from home, all of those things are now significantly advanced as a possibility for our community, that it wasn't even being looked at before this COVID situation. So I agree. I agree with what's been said, but that's some of the reasons why looking at these and looking at some changes could make sense in a smart way.
But they're not just making some changes, they've scrapped the other plans completely. So that's, to me, isn't an update. That is a brand new specific plan. And these are supposed to be updates. Yeah, I mean, had they looked at the originals and said, here's where we can make some improvements, maybe that'd be something. But these are brand new plans for both of them, and reductions of areas, and that's what concerns me, and increased housing as the top thing, without even knowing if we have to increase housing to based on the housing element. So
yeah, like I'm looking at the old one right now, and if staff has specific spots they feel that it's necessary to change and there's rationale for it, I think we should discuss that. But yeah, I'm looking at it right now and I just don't think that there's anything wrong. So yeah.
Okay, if there's no more conversation or direction, do we have a motion on this item?
So where do we start?
If I can jump in just for a second, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. If I can just remind the council, the focus of this item is really the work schedule. It's not the specific tasks themselves and what the specific work's going to be. It's whether or not to adopt a schedule when you'll be seeing these items. And I think for the items that the three items you're talking about, that there's been some discussion in particular, the two specific plans. I think the request from staff on this, as I understand it, is to continue this basically for a 6-month period and then come back to the Council and Planning Commission at a joint meeting for you to have that discussion of what you want to see in the specific plans and what you want staff to work on. And I'm trying to look at the Director of Community Development. If my understanding is correct, that's what it's going to be. So tonight's not a night to change the plans. It's just, you want the schedule that they proposed, and they would be coming back on those plans. With the zoning ordinance, as I understand it, it's going to come back to the Land Use and Development Committee, I believe, to take a look at, to see what the changes might be. So it's more of a scheduling issue tonight, less of the specifics, but I think the discussion you had was important to provide some context for the schedule.
So can I say authorize department's workload schedule except for the Brentwood Boulevard and downtown specific plan? Let's not put staff time into that until we decide how we want to move forward with that. But I think the dates on everything else was okay, if I'm not mistaken.
No, and I think you're correct, but part of this schedule is for them to come back to you to talk about those plans, as I understand it. So part of your motion would be to come back to talk to the council. It's just not going to happen in the next month or two. It'll happen sometime in September, I understand. So
she has September of 2023 on here. Estimated completion date. They don't have a time for us to talk about it again. I honestly don't need to talk about these ever again, but that's not up to me. Like, I really don't. Like, and unless staff has a specific area they would like to schedule time to review with us, I don't see what we have to talk about. So how do I put that in a motion? That if everything else on the schedule is fine, if staff finds that there is specific necessary areas in Brentwood Boulevard or downtown that need addressing, then they will agendize that and bring it to council at their leisure, because it's not us asking for it.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the schedule that we presented here is kind of the minimum. And if we can get something done sooner and we can come back to you earlier, we'll come back, because it's very clear we need clearer direction about how you'd like to proceed. This is one of the challenges when you have strategic plan initiatives of prior councils, and then you have councils change and the visions change. So we do need to revisit, maybe just kind of look at it from a baseline. Where do we need to go with this? And staff can be prepared maybe in a couple months and say,
but here's the thing, but like, we have all these other things that we think are super important, right?
Yeah, no, so these other ones we've heard very clearly need to be
in my opinion,
first.
Can take a back seat if they're competing for time with with anything else on this list.
Correct.
Like they can come way after you do anything else.
Yep, perfect.
And if I don't know how everyone else feels about that, that would be my motion.
Councilmember Rarey, your hand.
And does the open space that's in there, does that include the open space initiative as it was supposed to have included? Or, so that's the question that we need. And if, when is that scheduled in our timeline? I don't have the timeline in front of me.
I can, would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you see the timeline? So the open space initiative is this third bullet. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to, can you, okay. It's so small. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's this third bullet, so it's been pulled out pending council direction here.
Okay.
So it's going to be started because there is a timeline on this if we work on it to get it on the ballot, right?
Okay.
So it's this bar right here, if you can see the bottom here.
Okay, so our motion would include that as it was supposed to be included based on our strategic initiative planning session.
I'll defer to Damian on whether that needs to be a part of this motion. There's another agenda item tonight.
I read you what the direction was that was given, and the understanding that the city manager had. He specifically said it would come back as part of the open space in February.
And again, as I said 2 weeks ago, that was completely my error, and I apologize that wasn't in that presentation 2 weeks ago. I made a mistake in interpreting what happened in October versus what happened in December. That's completely my mistake, and I apologize if that's creating extra work for council tonight in this discussion. That was not my intent at all. It is on here. We've heard you that you want to work on it, and there is a deadline, just like the housing element and all that other stuff. That is a firm deadline, so it is on here. So I don't know that it needs to be separated out in the motion if you're going to approve this timeline as a whole with whatever changes you might want to recommend.
And I'll just jump in. That's why we incorporated it into this staff report, knowing that while we're still getting some clarity on how that future agenda item is working. By approving it here, you've given us enough direction. It's very clear how we need to work on that, and expeditiously. We will need some policy direction on how you'd like to see that configured, but we can get that as well as we go through this.
And is that what's going to happen when we bring up the agenda item then?
I believe that's how it's agendized. Yeah, we need some clear direction about what you'd like to see going forward on it, so we can then spend time on it and come back to you with a finished product. Whether that's what Mr. Floor has suggested, whether that's other examples out there in the state, and obviously what's defensible, et cetera, and come back with something in short order.
So can we talk about, because it's on this agenda item, right? So can we say, let's partner? We have residents that have already cataloged all of the open space as classified as open space. They've benchmarked Martinez. I'm sure that staff.
We can talk about that during the agenda item.
Well, I'm saying, but it's on this agenda item. Like, it's part of the text in here.
But the focus of this agenda item really is the schedule. It's the schedule for when you want staff to do work, not the specifics of the projects. And you will have an opportunity shortly to be able to talk more of the specifics of what an initiative might look like.
Okay, I guess my confusion is, why is it a future agenda item instead of just being put on the agenda, because that was the direction that we gave?
I can't speak to the reason why it's there on the future agenda item. The direction, as I understood it, was you wanted to talk about that item, and as part of that is to determine what that looks like, and that's what your discussion is going to be. And you want to spend staff time and resources on it. That part's easy, but what specifically do you want it to look like? Because that will impact what staff time and resources are going to be.
Though, if two council members both suggest an agenda item, doesn't it automatically become an agenda item and not a future agenda item? Yeah, even though it's been brought up multiple times.
The way that the system is set up is it allows you to put it on and talk about staff time and resources. And one of the reasons for that is we don't want to have a discussion on something that hasn't been agendized yet. And that's what was happening many years ago, is that council would put request future agenda items, but that request would then become the agenda item, and more time was spent talking about that item that wasn't agendized yet. And so it was getting very close to causing your city attorney some concerns about the Brown Act. And so that's why
anything else we can discuss on this can be held until we have this minute in a few minutes.
Yes, that's
right.
when we're going to, that's when it's anticipated that would be discussed.
Then I think, did you make a motion, Councilman Mendoza?
Yeah.
A second?
If you could repeat the motion, Councilmember Mendoza.
So I make a motion where we authorize the department's workload schedule according to the dates in here, except for Brentwood Boulevard and downtown specific plan. We'd like to hold off staff performing any work on those until we discuss it further at a later date. I don't know what that later date is because they have a lot going on, but at a later date.
So later than September, then is that what you're anticipating?
What?
Later than this September to come back and discuss how you'd like to proceed?
I'd like to see where we are on the housing element because I think the housing element is going to keep all of you and us slammed.
Yep.
So I would like to give you guys some breathing room around the housing element because I have a feeling that's going to be long, long days from what I'm hearing.
And if that's enough, I'll second.
What about getting the zoning ordinance for 330 and possibly the moratorium? I know it's going to go to LUD, but isn't that listed much further down the line? Don't we need to get 330 instituted into our ordinances?
Yeah, and that's why I want to come back to the LUD committee and talk in detail about that scope of work, and some buy-in, some direction, and then bring it to the full council. And that would come probably April to say, okay, here's what we need to do with the zoning code update and get good policy direction.
All right. I just don't want it to screw up this timeline if we're looking at bringing it back in April and saying, yeah, we really need to get this done. Now we've just thrown a wrench into that entire workload for community development.
Mr. Merritt, we have a first and a second, but we also have Ms. Wazinski, who really does most of the land use matters for our office. And I think she may have something to say as well, if you don't mind.
I don't mind, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for letting me interrupt for just 1 minute. I do note that both the Brentwood Boulevard and downtown specific plan update efforts have been at least partially funded by grants. And so before a motion is acted on to indefinitely put off that work, it might be helpful to have a greater sense from Ms. Morris what the impact on those grants would be in terms of whether or not we have any deadlines that the council would want to be aware of before those funds might disappear. So, and forgive me, Ms. Morris, if that's not information that you have with you, and if we need to come back to the council with that, but it just might be pertinent to the vote tonight. Thank you.
I do have that information. If so, the two grants, so the two specific plans, I apologize, are funded by what are called the LEAP and the REAP grants. Those are state grants that are available to us through the end of 2023. To date, we have not requested any reimbursements from those grants. We have not used the grant funds. We've used general fund money to pay for the consultants' work to date. If we want to use those grants for these projects, they have to be expended by the end of 2023. They have to follow the grant guidelines as well. So there is a potential if we modify the projects too much, it may no longer be within the scope of what the grants authorize. So that's something that would be a part of the conversation when we do have it with council. We would bring back, you know, what the grant guidelines are, and if what, depending on that direction, what that impact would be on the general plan or the grant. So there is some flexibility, but it still has to be within the guidelines of those REAP and LEAP grants to be eligible for the funds.
And do we have to have that meeting regarding what we want to do with it with the Planning Commission, or can this be a strictly City Council?
It can be strictly City Council.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, we do have a first and a second on the floor. If there's no modifications to that, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, staff, for your work on that. Item F1, request for future agenda items. Does anyone have a new request for future agenda items?
I do. When we did our strategic planning session, when we moved the youth center out of our top 10, we did move up one item, and that was engagement Spanish translation or Spanish interpretation. Yet when it came back to us, it wasn't included in our list. So is that something that staff is working on and we don't need to have it as a future agenda item? Or do I need to request it?
Do you have that in front of you? I don't recall if that was one of the ones that moved up to 9 but didn't have
I actually
didn't have 3 votes, if I remember right.
But Tim, I think also, didn't we at some point have the discussion around the cost for a translator? And I know that you guys came back with some numbers and we didn't move forward with that. And we didn't move forward with it because of the large amount of cost it would cost us. So we never gave you guys direction in regard, because after our meeting the other day in regards to the downtown at Brentwood Boulevard, I was thinking, I thought we had at some point had a discussion in regards to the costs and everything pertaining to translation, and we never really gave you guys some direction to move forward with that or not. So I'm just wondering, was that the case, or where were we at with that?
Yeah, I seem to recall there was some discussion at the council level. We did bring in a vendor who we'd gotten some pricing from, and if I recall correctly, it seemed like it was too expensive. And then if I remember right now, thank you for sharing the screen, council member. We only had 2 council members even put it as a priority, so we didn't move it forward when we came back to you last month with initiatives that had at least 3 majority votes. And
but myself, Councilmember Mendoza, and Councilmember Meyer all said that yes, we wanted that to move forward.
It sounds like this would need to be a future agenda item at this point. If you don't mind, this is sort of what I was saying earlier about how easy it is to start talking about an item when you just try to get clarification. So thank you for your patience on that.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else that has a future agenda item? Okay, seeing none, then we will move into item F.
Mayor, just to be clear, so to come back to you with an agenda item to talk about Spanish translation and outreach, and is that citywide? Is that in certain projects? Is that, how would you like to see that done? Is that for council meetings? Is it?
I think that's for the discussion at the next meeting for as a future agenda item.
I just want to make sure we agendize it sufficiently so that we can talk about it freely. We'll keep it broad enough so that we
broad enough, yeah.
Okay.
And then we can narrow it down.
So I have a question for Damien before we move forward with this. Is this something that I can request to save a step? This is something that clearly all of council's it matters a lot to our community, and they're something that we need to have as soon as possible. Is it something that the mayor?
At your next meeting, you'll be talking about whether or not you want to spend staff time and resources on this item, and then it will also sort of clarify what those staff time and resources will be spent on. So I think you'll get where you need to be, Mr. Mayor, because at that point, then staff will have direction on if this becomes a strategic initiative or not, or what they want to see. So I think you should be okay with that.
Yeah, thank you. Just didn't want to delay it any further if we could do it faster, but thank you. So at this time then, we'll move into item F.2.1, future and agenda item request from myself related to a celebration of the 75th anniversary of the city's incorporation. I will explain my request. It's pretty simple. Next year is the 75th anniversary of the city of Brentwood, and I would love to be able to make a community-wide celebration of the families, the history, everything that's happened here to move us to this point, and just have a great time of celebrating, the history of Brentwood. And have staff work on that, have potentially council give ideas, staff give ideas, the community give ideas on things that they'd like to see. With that, I will turn it to Margaret for public comments.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I will close public comments, move into council discussion. Councilmember Meyer.
I think it's a good idea to celebrate it. I think especially given what we've all been going through, we need something happy to look forward to. I'm curious though, because I don't even remember when it was a few months ago, I guess, when I brought up the agenda item of a day of service. And I'm wondering if we should consider making it annually on our anniversary of our day of incorporation, because everything we would be doing would be to serve the residents of Brentwood and to clean up Brentwood or do whatever it is to make Brentwood better. So I'm just wondering about incorporating that into it, if anybody has thoughts about that.
Personally, I think that's a fabulous idea, but Councilmember Rarey has her hand up, so I'll let her.
While that's a great idea, it doesn't always fall on a weekend, so we may not get a whole lot of participation during the week. It might be during the month of the celebration of the city, but if we can get it on a weekend where, you know, at least twice every 10 years, every 8 years, it will fall on the weekend. That would be a great thing. But the other thing is, do you have a dollar amount you're looking at for?
I don't. I have absolute confidence that our council members will be able to give clear direction on all of that, should this come back as an item.
Yeah, I think a celebration would be great. I was here for the 50th celebration, and yeah, I think it'd be a great idea.
Yeah, I also agree. I think we should keep them separate. A day of service is separate than a celebration. Also, I had mentioned January's cold. Can we do it during the year, like the 75th year? You know, like Disney celebrates all year when they have an anniversary. They don't do it just because it's like, if we do it in January, we might, I'm going to tell you, I don't go outside when it's cold. So I don't know what kind of turnout we're going to get if it's cold and rainy. So do we want to move it a little bit, like it's the 75th year, and do it like in the spring? Just a thought.
No, I completely agree. It being a 75th year, I think that gives us all kinds of latitude as to when we do it. It's a celebration for our community, so yeah, we want them to have as great a time as possible. And I agree, January is probably not the ideal time.
Yeah, and then I would say we keep it like this should be special 75th year. I think the day of service should be separate. Like let's do something different for day of service. So just to keep this day a little bit more special, not something that happens every year. That was it. But I think it's a good idea to have a day of service.
Councilmember Meyer?
I kind of agree and disagree. And I think like Antioch is this year celebrating 150 years. And so they've started doing events a month ago, and they're continuing throughout the entire year. And there are a wide variety of events, but they're all branded that way. They're all to celebrate the year. So I totally agree with Councilmember Mendoza when you're talking about doing something in like one event in January when people are not going to be as inclined to want to go out. I think we could spread it out. We could potentially do branding of 75 years in any of the events we do. So as soon as, you know, I haven't seen yet what staff is coming back with on the day of service, and I'm willing to consider moving that. But I think next year, it certainly could be branded to be part of the 75th anniversary, regardless of where it is in the year. But I think any events that we've got that are very specific to Brentwood could have that logo, if you will, 75th anniversary on the branding and on the messaging and on the marketing for that event. But I do like the idea of spreading it out, like, something that does happen in January that's a little bit more, inside, and then something in the summer, like a barbecue or outdoor event or whatever. But I think that's a good idea too, as long as I think the messaging, the branding could continue throughout the year.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, Mayor, I think it's a great idea. And I think it'd be something really good for our community. So I would support that.
Thank you. Well, do we have a motion for this? I would be happy to move it forward. I move that we have staff expend time and resources regarding the planning and implementation of a 75th anniversary of the city of Brentwood, and have it as a council discussion, future agenda item.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Now we will move into item F2.2, future agenda item request from Councilmember Mendoza related to councilmember interactions with prospective buyers of city-owned properties. Councilmember Mendoza.
Yeah, so last week, Vice Mayor Rodriguez brought up, he had a conversation about selling the CD building. Those were his words. And I guess for me, I thought we had all those conversations in closed session. So like yesterday when someone came to me about an opportunity with something at a park, I said, let me refer you to staff. Like, this is where we're at, let me refer you to staff. And I don't know if we need a policy about it, but I feel like that should be stuff that happens behind closed doors. I mean, behind closed session, we're talking about selling stuff. So I don't know if we need a policy or how this goes about. I just thought it was highly inappropriate. So I don't know how we do that. Do we do a policy? Do we just say, can we all just say kumbaya, hold hands, and say this isn't something we feel comfortable as a council that we should be doing? Like, I don't know how to move forward on this. All I know is it made me feel super uncomfortable, and I felt like it was highly inappropriate.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will open public comments on this item. I'll turn to you, Mark.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I have two speakers with their hands raised. Let me go ahead and share my speaker timer screen. And I'll call on Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I did notice at the time I was in attendance at that meeting, and I did notice at the time it just struck me as odd that the council member would bring up that he had spoken to someone about it and didn't really say who or why or what. So I would be interested in hearing some discussion, at least as to what that conversation entailed, and just so we can clear the air about, whether it was appropriate. I don't know what the motivation would be to have that sort of a conversation with the city council member. As you know, we don't approve generally of city council members even taking meetings with developers. So I'm just interested in finding out more about what happened there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Danny Dorman. Oh, nope, he's raising his hand and unraising. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Kept hitting the wrong button. Well, I brought this up earlier, and I am not as delicate as the previous caller was, and sometimes I wish I were. But here's a scenario that plays out in my head. Council member, oops, there it is, sits down with Sino and says, hey, I heard that building's for sale. Or I heard that the city's going to do something with it. Yeah, wow. Maybe you can help a brother out with this. Well, let me see what I could do. Let me call staff. Staff, what's going on with this? Maybe we could work something out. Shake hands, have a beer, call it a day. That's the problem with saying what was said in that 40 seconds. And this, I don't even know if there should be ordinances. I thought there were already ordinances about this. I mean, boy, you guys went through a list not too long ago where what a planner can say, who they can say it to, and in what context. I think it's just real simple. Someone needs to find out exactly what was said. Now, fortunately for us, the person involved is sitting in this meeting. So it would be great so that he can clear the air and give specifics as to what was said, who it was said with. My buddy and I here, we have a drinking bet going on, and for every him and ha, we have to take a shot. So I want to thank the council in advance for giving me something to party with. And I know I'm sounding sarcastic and I know I'm needling, but this is serious stuff. This is the stuff that we can't allow to happen. And I am really, 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 really tired of not just this, but the previous thing too, where don't even get me started. That's the $250,000 man, and his direction is killing me, but I'll focus on hopefully hearing something from Vice Mayor Rodriguez and his conduct. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, we will close public comment and we will move into council discussion. Vice Mayor, your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I want to apologize ahead of time. This has been blown, for me at least, very out of proportion, but I understand there may be concerns. So I think it's a great time to, address it. I don't know if people know, but I work around town all day, every day. I actually have an office here in Brentwood, and I'm working schools in the area. And through that, I go to a lot of lunch meetings in town. And obviously people know that I'm involved in the council and involved in a lot of different things within the city. I think like a lot of us, right, we get approached by different things. And somebody had showed an interest, approached me that owns a custom auto body shop here in Brentwood. It's been here for a long time, is looking for larger space. And he had heard that, and he had done, I guess, his own research regarding the CD building, and understood that there was an interesting kind of relationship with the city and I guess the state or whatever. And I just heard him out, and pretty much what I told him is for him to contact the city, because at that time the building wasn't even part of the discussion of being the youth center. And so I told him he needed to contact the city and get more information about that, because I wouldn't be the person to really give him the proper information. So pretty much it was not a developer. It wasn't anything as simple as walking through MJ's area and going to lunch and passing by and somebody asking me about it. And obviously giving common courtesy and listening to our resident who currently owns an auto body shop here in Brentwood, and directing him to the city if he was still interested in that facility. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I respect the speakers that have spoken and their opinions, but I know I've spoken to both of them at some point here as a council member and as a vice mayor. And if any of them, both of them have my phone number at any time to contact me, and I'm more than willing to sit down and talk to them as well. But that's as far as it was. I think like a lot of us do, we directed them to the city of Brentwood. to get more information about the facility, but that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendoza.
So you just mentioned this 2 weeks ago. You just said that when you spoke to this individual, there had been no discussion regarding the Measure X and the youth center, which is untrue because we've been talking about the Measure X and the youth center for a few months. So did it happen 2 weeks ago, or did it happen a long time ago and you forgot about it and you just brought it up? Because the timing on that, what you just said, isn't jiving.
No, that was brought up a while back ago, that conversation regarding the CD building. That same individual is the individual that was interested in the possibility of Delta Fence. His understanding was Delta Fence was possibly going to be for sale. That was a whole different other conversation in regards to, he's just looking for space to do his custom auto body shop, and that's it. So yes, so that conversation regarding the CD was a lot longer than 2 weeks ago.
So why did you bring this up 2 weeks ago during informational update if it wasn't a current informational update?
Mendoza, that's it has,
again.
I mean,
if we're doing informational updates.
Okay. Whatever, I mean, that's okay. But what I'm saying is, it's in regards to a custom auto body shop. It's a local businessman that was asking questions. It has nothing to do with anything else but directing him to talk to the city. Has nothing to do with the developer. Has nothing to do with a friend, anything like that. And basically, my conversation with him is to direct him to go talk to the city about the CD building. That's
okay,
pretty much.
So you held on to it and presented it 2 weeks ago. Okay, got it.
Councilmember Rarey.
So I have no problems with any of us. If a person wants to come to us and talk to us about bringing business to Brentwood, let them contact us, because then we can forward them over to our economic development department. And I've reported out, but you don't report out where they're looking at it or who they are, because you could jeopardize the fact that it's of them bringing their business to town. Even the mayor says, I've met with some businesses. I've said I've met with businesses, and I mean, council member or Vice Mayor Rodriguez could have easily had said, I met with somebody who was interested in locating his business on the south side of town. The fact that he specifically said the CD building, which we had approved as a site on January 25th, and then alluded to the fact that, oh yes, we've already decided it was going to be a youth center, felt like he was trying to torpedo our chances for the Measure X funds. And it was odd that it had to come out that way. So I don't think we need to have a policy on who can talk to somebody, but I think we need to respect the people who are talking to us and keep it on if you're going to report out on it, is to keep it as a generalization. I met with somebody who's interested in bringing business to town. You can say what quadrant of the city they're in, but this did feel like it was a torpedo of them, that location for Measure X funding.
And if I can, Mayor, Councilmember Rarey, I really do appreciate you saying that. And I apologize if it came out that way. As long as we could get a youth center in Brentwood, I don't care if it's on whatever side of town, right? Because I would support that wherever it's at. Obviously, in those conversations, I would have liked it somewhere else, but I would never jeopardize that opportunity. But I appreciate your advice, but also in regards to maybe how that could have been worded out differently. So I do respect that, and I appreciate that, the council member.
Is there any further discussion or recommendation on this item?
No, I think as long as the council respects, we don't try to ruin anything else and it comes out clean, and we don't put anything else on the line that we're voting on, I think it'd be great. But yeah, to be more discreet going forward for all of us, I think would be great. And so I don't need a policy. I just need an agreement that that's how we're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you. No, I completely agree with everything that's been said. Councilmember Rarey was very eloquent in the way she presented it. It could genuinely, we've got a lot of people in town that are starting to see the benefits of their hard work for sometimes decades, where they want to make a bigger footprint here in town, and being careful as to using generalities will always help. And so I think as a council, and certainly, I appreciate the vice mayor sending people to city staff. I imagine every one of us on council do that fairly regularly when we're approached. So I think as long as we do that, we can maintain the integrity of the process, which is absolutely essential. If council is okay, then we'll move into item F2.3. And it is a future agenda item request from Councilmember Mendoza and Councilmember Meyer regarding the placement of a city initiative related to the preservation of open space on the ballot for November 8th, 2022 general municipal election. Councilmember Mendoza and Meyer.
Yeah, so like Rod Floor said, he's been working on this for a long time, him and actually a few other residents. And I've been talking to him about it he's probably been working on it over a year, I would think. And he has researched a lot of, he's Martinez, Dublin, there's other areas that are trying to do this. So I just want it on the ballot. And we've talked about it, I think, like Councilmember Rarey said, we've talked about it a few times before. Again, in that meeting when I sat and I asked Damien, are we better protected if it's not the five of us, if it's on a voter initiative or, ballot measure? And he said yes. So I just want us to protect all of our open space, especially like all our golf courses, which could be coming next for building. So if we could move forward on this and include the help of Rod Floor, who's already done a lot of work, who's already talked to some attorneys, if that can save staff time and money, I think that would be fantastic also.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I 100% support the idea of working with Rod Floor if he's already done a lot of that legwork. I wanted to quickly try to just read the text of AB 672, which was proposed last year. It did not fly, but it could very easily come back. And this is specific to municipal golf courses in high density and park core areas, and says municipal golf courses could be rezoned into housing developments that offer 25% affordable units and 15% open space. It could remove municipal golf courses from protections of the Public Parks Preservation Act. It could provide an exemption to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and could make it easier to rezone public open space land for housing. So that's just one small example of why this is a critical thing. We're seeing how the state every year is taking more and more control away from us as far as our zoning and our land use. And we need to protect this. To be completely upfront about this also, in case future council decides that they want to start making some more developer fees by rezoning. We know very well that our residents are all about open space and protection and sticking to the plan. And I think that if we have this opportunity to push this forward with the support of some residents that have put together this wonderful information, it's a no-brainer for me. I think we've been talking about this kind of thing for months. I think we really need to move forward in a timely manner to make sure it's on the ballot in time. And we are not, as Councilmember Mendoza mentioned, we're certainly not the only city looking at this. It's been all over the place. Silicon Valley just had some successes in this area. So let me double check my notes here, because I think I've covered everything I wanted to say, but our voters are supporting land conservation, parks, climate resiliency, and habitat around here. I don't think there's any question that this is worth moving forward on.
Thank you.
And I just want to support Councilmember Meyer. The golf course is back, and it's AB 1910, and the park one is now this year, so AB 2625. And then parking lots will also now, like if you have a parking lot, those might need to go away. AB 2762. So it would protect all of those areas.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will open public comments. I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
I received 0 written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I will go ahead and share my timer screen. Sorry, I lost my, there we go. I have one person with their hand raised. I'll call on Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for supporting this. I do want to mention again the initiative that we have a draft of is designed to be resilient. It's fully severable, so if one part gets knocked down, the rest of it stands up. We do know that the state is attacking cities. I think everybody on the council is well aware of that, and seems to be united in wanting to fight this. What I will say about this ballot measure is if we can get it on the ballot and the people approve it, that gives it some strength. And it is also something we can consider as a companion measure to the statewide measure that'll probably be on the ballot in 2024, which would strengthen it. What it does do is it limits what the city will do, and it gives the city some recourse if the state comes after us. I can't say how solid it is, but it's as solid as we can do right now, and it's very well drafted. Again, I basically stole it from Martinez, and they were very thorough. And I have spoken to our attorney, and he said that it should be solid. He hasn't reviewed it yet. And if the city wants to work with an attorney, I can recommend either the attorney that I've been speaking to or a referral that he gave me in case he's not available. So I think it would be advisable to have an outside attorney, someone who is an environmental attorney, more so than someone who is just a land use attorney, because they may tend to not always see things the way that would be the most beneficial to making a strong bill. With that, I am just coincidentally, I'm off work all next week. I just have a scheduled timeout from the office, and we do those about every 7 weeks, and which is very nice. And so I can make myself available as soon as next week, or if that's not convenient, with a day's notice, I can take a day off. I have a great deal of flexibility, and I would really love the opportunity to do this for the city. I've been here asking for so many things, and I feel like this is something that I can give back. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have one additional speaker, Danny Dorman. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that this has been brought up because we really do need to shore up our defenses in any way, shape, or form that we can. I have asked, still haven't had an answer, but I have asked, what is it that Alamo's doing? Black Hawk, down in Southern California, Calabasas, or the Hollywood Hills. How are they crafting their land use that keeps the environment we want out here? My big worry is that you'll ask staff to figure it out, and they'll come back 2 weeks from now and say they misunderstood. And can we come back and do it again, and all this and that? And I'm not slamming staff. I'm slamming the $250,000 man, because you guys have given them some pretty clear direction, and yet there still seems to be some drops there. So whatever we can do, Rod has volunteered. God bless him. Godspeed. If he needs anyone else to help with legwork or bird dogging, he's got my number too. Anything we can do for this city. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will close public comment, move into council discussion. I get to start it off finally. I really get to do that. But one of the things that we clearly all agree on historically and recently is that we as a city have got to do everything we can to preserve local control of what our city looks like in the future and now. And every session that the calendar brings, the state is chipping away at local control. And those of us that live here moved here for a reason. The quality of life that you experience in Brentwood is becoming more and more rare. Even outside of the state of California, it's becoming more rare. Brentwood is the place that we have chosen to live and raise our families. And I love it here. Each of our council members have said that they love it here, and they prove it by the work they do on council every day. And so I agree. I want staff to be able to have every tool necessary to help preserve our community, our open spaces, our properties. I will say that I do appreciate the work that has been done by our residents. And not just this one, this is the most recent one, but over the years, several of our residents come with efforts to help our community stay the way it is. We love Brentwood. And so I would certainly love to see staff, take every resource available to make sure that we are able to protect the decisions that we make as a city as far as what our land and our community looks like. Councilmember Rarey.
I have to agree with everything that's been said tonight. To Mr. Dorman's comment, there is no city and no county in the state of California that is immune to the laws being passed at the state legislature that is affecting us across the entire state. This is the one thing that we can do to preserve our open space through this voter initiative. And with 3 golf courses, 2 golf courses and 1 abandoned golf course that is open space right now, we need to be able to protect that, because if they go under, if all of them go under for some reason, or they get offered the price tag of from a developer that says, oh, you know what, I think it's time to walk away from the golf course industry, we could see those changed over, especially with the laws that are coming out. So I think this open space initiative is vital to keeping our town the way that our town is and what we all moved here for. And we will strive to make changes the way that we can at the ballot box. And I look forward to passing this, and I'm sure our residents do too.
Is there any further discussion, or is there a motion on this item?
I'd like to make a motion that we have staff to spend time and resources on this issue, and also that they meet with resident Rod Floor to go over the language for Martinez and potentially write it. Can we do a joint? If you have something,
I don't think you need a motion for this. It's just the mayor asked if we're all okay with staff time.
Oh,
Actually,
it says council motion.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, it would help if staff had some clarification of what the council is looking for specifically in this type of ballot measure, this initiative. Specifically, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like staff would, or the council would like staff to look at the Martinez model, to work with local residents who've done work on this and see what they've developed. Speaking for my office, if the motion is approved, I will be bringing outside counsel on board, and they will be. I'm looking at specific environmental attorneys, and I'd like to have someone with experience in election law, because there are some nuances to state election law that I don't want to be missed should this move forward. And so I just want to clarify that what we're bringing back to you is what you're looking for, because as another speaker said, we don't want to come back to you with this isn't what we're looking for. So it sounds to me that the Martinez model is one. I've understood that Dublin may have something similar to this, and then also work with residents. Is that correct? Is that
wasn't there something going on in Silicon Valley too?
There was in Silicon Valley. There was also one years ago in Pleasanton. I believe San Jose did one recently.
Did Pleasanton get sued? But theirs was a little different, wasn't theirs? It might have been.
I'm not aware of the specific litigation, given the number of lawsuits cities seem to face all the time on land use matters. But on this, it sounds at a minimum, the council would like the staff to focus on the Martinez model. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So then it would seem the motion would be for staff that staff time and resources be spent to bring forward to the council for the consideration a voter initiative ballot measure that is modeled on Martinez, as well as work with local residents and learn from them what they prepared and look at what they prepared and see how that could be modeled for something that the city might use. Does that encompass everything?
Except that we want to make sure that it's on the ballot this year.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
I just don't want that to be.
That would need to be done, prior to the deadline to put on the November ballot.
I just want to make sure that's in that language in the ballot.
And then consider it added to that language.
Okay, thank you.
You just added it actually, so.
Good.
Do you want to say so moved, and then I can second you.
So moved.
And then I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Margaret, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Wonderful. Thank you. At this time, before I ask for a motion for adjournment, I would like to ask our community to keep the families of those that have residents. We have many families here in Brentwood that have families over in the war-torn area of the Ukraine right now. Just keep them in mind, your thoughts and prayers during the time, this wartime over there. This week, we have a local residential family that have lost some loved ones this week there, and so every one of our families here in Brentwood matter. They're all our neighbors. They're our community, and so if you know someone that has relatives there, just encourage them, help them, and keep them in your prayers. At this time, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rarey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.